Welcome to Module 2, Part 1. Now that you have a better idea of who you're going to work with, what problems you solve, and solutions that you're going to provide for your clients, it's time to start putting together your packages so that you can start enrolling those ideal clients that we identified in Module 1. Now, in this section and the next one, we are first going to review best practices around packaging your services, plus service boundaries to consider so that you know what to include and what not to include in your coaching packages and services. Then in Part 3, you will actually outline what your package offerings will be and attach a price tag to them to start selling them to your ideal clients. Now let's begin by talking about how much time you should allocate for each coaching session and how much time you'll need outside of your coaching sessions to maybe attend to any other client items to prepare for the session or to maybe wrap the session up and complete it. Now, with the question of how much time you should allocate for your coaching sessions, we can look to many other health service industries for best practices and examples around this. Now, the massage and personal training industry and their appointments are perfect examples. As a personal trainer myself and a former manager of a gym and corporate wellness coaching department, I noticed that there was always a industry standard per se when it came to appointments in order to allow for time in between sessions in order for the personal trainer or the coach to basically close out the session, hit the bathroom in between appointments, grab a drink of water or a snack if they needed to do that. Now, if your sessions are 60 minutes long, this gives you zero wiggle room to attend to any personal needs between your appointments, or if your sessions happen to run a little late, which inevitably will happen from time to time, you don't have a buffer in between to catch up. Now, if we look at massage services, you will see the same standard applied in this industry as well. Appointments might be marketed as an hour or an hour and a half long, but the time that you actually spend on the table may be only 50 minutes or 80 minutes in order to provide the therapist with a much needed buffer in between their appointments to prep for the next client or to take care of personal needs. Now, as an FDN, we typically have maybe 2 to 3 types of sessions. The first type of session is an initial results review session to basically start or kick off the client's program. This usually happens once you've received all of the lab tests, you've completed your initial analysis and interpretation, and created their dress protocol for them. Now, during this session is when you will typically sit down with them and explain the results along with your recommendations that you've come up with for them. Now, after the results review session, there are then what I call ongoing coaching sessions where you will maybe review and train them on how to introduce their supplements and titrate them properly, and where you'll also maybe break down the different topics of dress to cover them in more detail and help them to make the recommended changes in their lives that you are suggesting for them. And then there are what I call the reassessment sessions. And this is where you may address, retesting with any actual lab results or by using the questionnaires to reassess their progress and evaluate how they were doing so that you can make any necessary course corrections or give them a great thumbs up. Now, in my experience of working with over 100 clients, I have found that 80 minutes is basically a reasonable amount of time for a results review session. And 45 to 50 minutes is usually pretty perfect for ongoing coaching sessions or the reassessment sessions, depending on how many retest labs you might be using. These timeframes also ensure that the client does not feel overwhelmed with the amount of time that is involved and that they have to spend, and so you don't exceed their attention span, right, and lose their interest. However, if you feel as though your session lengths need to maybe be different to meet your client's needs or your personal approach, please feel free to play around with the amount of time you will need and you want to offer in each different type of session that might be included in your packages. Now, once you know how much time you'll be providing for each session and what session types, you'll also want to consider how much time you will need in order to prepare for the sessions and or to wrap up the session once it's finished with the client, essentially. Here are some items maybe outside of the coaching sessions that you may want to consider in order to calculate your overall total estimated time that you spend with a client, which will ultimately help you to determine your package cost. So things like sending and receiving test results and questionnaires. I typically allocate about 60 minutes for this when the client gets started, in case the client needs a lot of support in completing any of the items. Also, maybe analyzing the results received, medical director consults, and putting together your interpretation and dress protocol. I have found that on average, I need maybe about 2 hours for this, whether it's 2 or 5 lab tests. And then there's also sending the client maybe resources or items after the coaching call and maybe logging your notes once that's done. I usually just need about 15 minutes for this, and that's plenty of time. Then there's any other additional email support you might provide between your sessions. So in between my client coaching sessions, I send them what I call a mid-session check-in email. I keep it brief and to the point just to provide additional support and accountability. So sending the email itself literally only takes me about 2 minutes, and then receiving their response and maybe replying takes about another 5 minutes. Now, sometimes these emails can be a little bit more lengthy or involved, so I allocate 30 minutes for this in my coaching packages just to cover any of that. And then there's time to analyze retests or reassessments using the questionnaires. And in my experience, usually the client will only maybe do one retest lab at a time, along with doing a reassessment using the questionnaires. So I typically only need about 60 minutes to prepare my interpretation and to update their dress protocol to review with them in the next session. Now, one of your action items will be to outline what will be included in your packages, the time you need in and outside of your coaching sessions, and then you're going to add it all up together in order to figure out what you should be charging based upon how much time you're having to invest in the client yourself. Now, in addition to figuring out how much time you will need to spend on your clients, you will also need to determine maybe how many coaching sessions and what lab tests you should offer in your different packages that you're going to create. It's best to usually have 2 to 3 different package offerings so that you and the client have options to meet the client's needs, and so that you can downsell them if one of your higher end packages is maybe over their budget or just too much for where they're at currently. So let's talk about total number of sessions in a package first. Now, in my initial business and marketing training, I was taught to create a 90-day program as a best practice, but I quickly found within the first 3 clients that I work with that didn't really fit the FDN model of work due to the pathogen protocols that could be up to 6 months long if they had parasites, bacteria, and yeast overgrowth, and based on how many supplements they had and how much time that they needed to maybe introduce each supplement one at a time and titrate it up. So I created packages with a certain number of sessions in order to basically meet my clients' needs, to be able to work at their pace and to see them through their initial dress protocols that I was putting together for them, instead of having a deadline of time that we had to meet. I also found that meeting with clients weekly was typically too much for them. They needed more time in between their sessions in order to adopt the changes that I was asking them to make. And then the more that we worked together and the more comfortable, educated, and compliant that they became with making those changes, we were able to then space out their sessions. So based on this experience, I found that the clients had most success if we scheduled their sessions once every 2 weeks in the beginning. So for the first 3 to 4 sessions, we would meet once every 2 weeks. And then we could space out the rest of their sessions maybe every 3 weeks, and then every 4 weeks as they became more comfortable and compliant with the work that we were doing. And I would send them a simple single email check-in in between their sessions to give them the support and accountability that they needed in order to keep going in between our appointments. With this insight, I then created packages that included a certain number of sessions to see them through their protocols and the work that we were basically doing together. So in my high-end package known as my Total Transformation, that includes 1 results review session, 17 ongoing coaching sessions, plus 3 reassessment sessions, and typically will last the client somewhere between 9 to 12 months based upon how we space out those sessions and how comfortable they feel with the work. Now, my middle of the road package, known as my intensive, includes 1 results review session, 11 ongoing sessions, plus 1 reassessment session, and that will usually last a client somewhere between 6 to 8 months, again, based upon how we space out the sessions and how comfortable they feel with the work. And then I have my Jumpstart package, or the beginner package, which just includes 1 results review session and 5 ongoing coaching sessions, and that will usually last a client approximately 3 to 4 months based on how we space out those sessions. Now, another action item that you will have is going to be to sit down and figure out how many sessions you would like to offer in your 2 to 3 different package offerings in order to meet your client's needs and to create potentially a high-end package, a middle of the road, and a Jumpstart package option. Now, lastly, let's discuss lab tests to be included in your packages. I am a firm believer in the 5 lab tests that Reed taught us about in the FDN course in order to do proper investigation and get the insights that we need on hormones, immune, digestion, detoxification, energy, and the nervous system. Now, sure, there are a lot of in-depth tests that we can access as FDNs, and at times these tests have been very helpful investigative tools. But I find that I always need the clues from the 5 foundational tests, so that's where I always start with every single client, no matter what. Now, I call the 5 foundational tests my front line of investigation, because these are tests that I would want to run with every single client that comes to see me. And anything outside of that are what I call basically my second line of investigation, and I utilize those along the way when I need to collect more clues or dive into a certain area a little bit more deeper. So based upon this approach, my high-end package includes the 5 foundational tests: 1 for hormones, 1 for stool, the metabolic profile, food sensitivities, and metabolic typing. From there, I chose basically 3 out of those 5 lab tests that I felt were of highest priority to give me the greatest number of clues and for the client's money that they are investing. So I included in my middle of the road package the hormone test, the stool sample test, and the metabolic profile. Now, with my Jumpstart package, it's a beginner package, so I didn't actually really want to include any lab tests, but I wanted to offer them as add-ons on the side so that I could maybe customize an option that meets the client's needs and their budget basically where they are. So deciding what lab tests you're going to include in your packages will be determined by what tests you basically see the most value in running in order to serve your ideal clients, and how many clues you think that you'll need to help them basically solve their problems. Now, to keep it simple for potential clients and so that they aren't overwhelmed with too many details or too many options around your packages, I recommend using the same core lab tests in your packages and simply modifying how many will be included in each package in order to maybe vary the package offerings. This is why in my intensive package, I offer the same 3 that I would offer in the transformation. Now it's time for you to sit down and outline these items that I just covered so that you can start to create clear, concise packages for yourself. Feel free to take what I've done and make it your own as a starting point, knowing that as you work with clients, you will maybe uncover ways to improve your packages and ways that you want to change them down the road too. And you can do that at any time. My packages have certainly evolved since I started my business. Or you can take my best practices to create something totally new to meet the needs of your business approach and your clients. So time to dive into the work and figure out what you're going to include in your packages. Hop on over to the Facebook group if you need any help or have any questions.